Hey everyone, James Azar here, CyberHub Engage, our virtual summit. We're in it because we have to be. We are in quarantine because of COVID-19. I've got a very exciting and special session. For those of you worried about, being at home with your family all the time, this man deals with only people that do that predominantly. I've got Rutan. He's the director of community at Synack Red Team, and we're going to be talking about the ethical hacker's point of view, the potential vulnerabilities in a distributed workforce, really helping you folks address some of this stuff. Ryan, good morning or afternoon or wherever it is. In part,
Austin, Texas, it's good afternoon.
It's morning somewhere, and in Austin, you eat breakfast for breakfast. You eat tacos for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
That is correct. That is the etiquette.
That is the etiquette. That is the only way to do it. In the morning, some eggs and sausage. In the afternoon, a little bit of chicken. At night, steak only. Onion and cilantro, and you call it a day.
Pretty much.
That is awesome. Ryan, welcome, man. How you doing?
Hi, doing all right. Like I said, just trying to, this is my where I work normally. So again, working remotely and working from home is kind of in my DNA. So it's kind of not that big of a change, but again, trying to work with the rest of the world that's getting used to it is always interesting. So
yeah, you bring up a really good point, which is, it's your business model and it's your job to work with people who typically work from home. Right? A predominant part of people that work on your red team are part of, are really all over the globe, and they're SRTs that work from, their houses.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I would say that most of the researchers that we deal with, they do have a setup similar to this. Obviously we have people who, set up in their kitchens and kind of go off the cuff. But for the most part, our researchers, they do have, they actually are very proud of their work environments, LED lights, multiple monitors, very clean, sometimes very chaotic. So again, there's almost like an element of persona that comes through with their home work environment. We also have people who like to travel. So they use this as an opportunity to, they travel, earn a little money, keep traveling, and they just kind of rotate and move on the spot. So I think that there's definitely an element here where, again, working remotely, working from anywhere, the SRT and working with them specifically, it kind of resonates, and, we're doing well right now.
So let's get into a little bit of this. COVID-19 has really changed the way, everyone interacts. Were you at Fogo de Chao for RSA?
I was not. I was actually here in Austin working on another event. And so again, I was not there, but I was working to help support the CTF that they had there remotely. So
yeah, I had meet overload sitting at Fogo de Chao with you guys for like 2 days.
I'm pretty sure that's what happens. I don't think there's really any other outcome from there. So
no, it was a blast. And so let's talk a little bit about the Synack Red Team and the community of ethical hackers that you guys have built. How's that really empowered you during these times?
I think what's really interesting is the fact that really these times just exacerbate the environment in which we've kind of envisioned for the future in the world. I think, when we look at Synack as a crowdsourced security platform, which is, in theory, by definition, it's, the best people enabled and made more productive by the best software, and then ultimately wrapping all of that into a nice tight blanket of trust, or whether it's, customers, researchers, Synack, all of us, using that trust as a means for us to move things forward and distribute the workload, having people available at all times of the day. That it's important for us. And I think it's also because people are being forced into an environment where they do need to be distributed, working from anywhere in most cases, and also being compelled to actually have physical distance from places. It's actually taking work and taking the physical aspect away from it. I would almost argue that over the last many years, like the physical aspect of pen testing has slowly eroded into a more digital, scan and test from anywhere model for a predominant number of systems, mainly because the systems that are being used in that capacity are distributed. They're out and open and externally available. So that has opened up the opportunity for people like the SRT, to take place. I think one of the big differentiators for us is we actually have a VPN solution that we call LaunchPoint. All of our researchers, they do all their testing on it. So again, we have a secure, safe, and monitored way in which we can do these tests, in a secure fashion that our customers trust. And because all of our researchers are always doing their testing at all times, when we go to this, this surge of people going to a remote distributed workforce, like people are trying to kind of hurry to figure out what the remote work strategy is, like we've already figured it out. So from our SRT perspective, nothing has changed. Even more so, we have a solution called LP Plus, which our researchers can actually have computers in the cloud that allow them to actually, if, for example, with everyone rushing home, even for me, like I pay for, a pretty broad pipe of internet at home. And now that everyone is at home during day, like the pipe is now slower. If you are in a situation where you have a lower bandwidth, LP Plus is actually lets you do all your scanning from a computer that's in the cloud, that's away from you. And it helps you kind of just bifurcate your actual traffic of scanning versus doing your testing. So again, for us, I think that our platform in general is kind of ready for situations like this. And again, it goes towards the personas we've talked about, people staying at home in their caves, whether, whatever they may be, or even traveling for that matter, and doing research from wherever they want to in the world. So for us, I see it as just being business as usual.
Yeah, it's fascinating business as usual because I also work from home, and to me it is business as usual. The only thing that's different for me is I'm on a 2-week self-quarantine, Ryan. And my quarantine ends tomorrow. I was in Israel. I came back 2 weeks ago on Friday. And so I've got one more day, I'm counting down the hours. It'll be 32 hours from now at 2 a.m. on Friday to Saturday night. I can walk outside and tell the world, I'm back.
Nice.
Ari Gold style if I want to. But
Nice. Oh, I didn't know that. That's insane. But yeah, well, congrats on making it through.
No symptoms. No symptoms too, by the way. And you know what? It's not so bad. I've made it through okay. But I think a predominant part of all of this and the general attitude right now with people working from home and a lot of systems I speak with, Ryan, is they've had to postpone and cancel their pen testing. Talk a little bit about how your SRTs are really helping to protect organizations in this period of time where people are used to having their red teamers and their auditors and pen testers show up on site, and you guys are able to do it remotely. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to security never stops. It's a prevalent problem. If you take a pause, it's going to keep going. And so to be on top of it is important. So when you have a situation like this where the game changes, where what you've done normally has stopped or has changed or caused you to do a course correct, it's important to go and understand that there's people out there who have figured out how to do external pen testing and how to do this in a reliable way and getting a large swath of exposure. We have research customers, for example, who choose just U.S. researchers. We have those who open it up to the entire world, recognizing that talent doesn't just live and stay in the U.S. It permeates all borders. It comes from everywhere, and so from our ability to get them in, to get the researchers into this flow is important, and that's where Synack's model is in terms of how we engage customers, get them teed up to recognize that there's a need for a pen test, recognize that there's a way to do it remotely, helping with scoping, making sure that the scoping is tight and appropriate for a remote audience. But again, it's all about the methodology. And what's nice about it from a researcher perspective is that they really just see the end product of that methodology. Targets come online, they're given a rules of engagement, they go at it. They have an open, a closed period. They submit their findings, and when it's all done, they get paid if they get accepted results.
So you brought up a really good point, and one of the things I think that a lot of people don't understand as a CISO, one of the reasons we like on-prem people typically is because we can interact with them. And using Synack, though, we can also interact with the SRTs that are doing our pen test. We can figure out how they did it. We can speak to them about remediation and so forth. Right? This isn't a cutthroat kind of a he'll do it, here's the report, read the report. You're actually speaking with the folks as well.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we have in terms of volume, the most important thing that we can do is deliver a quality product that is self-sustaining and saying, look, hey, here is your risk assessment, here's your portfolio, this is where you're most vulnerable, and that stands on its own. But if there is a need for people to feel as if that they know who's doing it, most of our researchers that, the ones who, find the big vulns, like what's interesting about the ethos, I guess you could say, of a researcher is, when they find something that's really cool or very impactful, they take a lot of pride in it and they're very happy to talk about it. So So if we have a customer that has a high impact vuln that they, would like to get more detail on or whatever, we work to kind of create that triage to bring and connect the questions and make it so that those two can actually kind of have a deeper conversation where it's needed.
So let me ask you this. What are the typical vulnerabilities a cyber criminal, I mean, the question says hacker. I don't like to call hackers because hackers are good guys. They're cyber criminals. So we're going to call them cyber criminals. Are you okay with that, Ryan?
I can work with that.
Awesome. So what are the typical vulnerabilities a cyber criminal would try to exploit given the increase right now in a distributed workforce, people working from home, on their own devices, on unsecured networks, and so forth?
I think the biggest thing, if I were to pick, where people would go, I think the first thing that they would try to look at is obviously things that are around productivity software, connectivity software. So anything that helps people collaborate, share information, that's going to be an obvious target because it's going to be an increased focus from all these distributed places. What's important to note here is that it just goes to show, like in modern day economy and industry, that it's very important for companies to invest in the remote work strategy. Like, what is it, and have it at the ready. The more that you leave that up to chance and be like, we won't support, remote work, or it's not something that we're going to do. Scenarios like this come along, and you're like, you have to move really quick. So from that perspective, getting those people in, getting access to, like I said, the conferencing solutions, the collaboration software, those are going to be the first that I would look at, trying to make that work. The second things I would look at from that angle in terms of people with malintent would be around areas around doing things around like systems that were once protected by firewalls, or once the security of the solutions were deemed good enough because they were exposed only to internal traffic. But when you start exposing VPNs and breaking and punching holes in this firewall to allow, what used to be opaque now to be semi-transparent access into this network, now you have the ability to potentially to exploit those type of holes. And if they aren't set up correctly, then those systems are just kind of fair game. And they're basically, sitting ducks in terms of they haven't been tested. Most likely they've been lower on the list of a test cycle because they have the assumed, okay, this will never be seen by the light of the internet, so why test it? And then there's, in general, from a malicious perspective, I think the other angle to look at it is it's always about the people. In times of chaos, that is where missteps can happen the most. People are familiar with, they come in, they do their Monday 9 to 5, they have a process, everything feels good, they rinse and repeat, everything feels normal. During a time of chaos where everyone everything is in the air, especially when you have people self-isolating, maybe your authority chains are not necessarily intact, or they're disconnected. There's a lot of opportunity for people to come in and do things like, social engineering or phishing attacks, or trying to go after people in a certain way. So from my perspective, that's the big thing. Like they rally behind the chaos and the fact that things are happening that are not necessarily normal. And from there, they kind of take that as a guise to go in and kind of do whatever they need to do. And that can be anything around low-level recon, understanding, what kind of solutions are people using, looking at like, it's not that hard to understand what, collaboration software a company may or may not use, naming conventions, enumerating URLs. It's pretty straightforward for the most part. And so once you can identify software solution version with a company, at that point, it's just a matter of dedication and time. So in my opinion, that's kind of, the most important things that they'll go after. And when you look at things around like those exposed systems that were internal only at one point, going after like, reflected XSS or stored XSS, finding ways to drop things into those environments such that they trigger and fire and exfiltrate data afterwards. Again, completely unbeknownst to the user. There's just so many different ways in which you can attack it at that point. And I think that's, the chaos is definitely the blanket in which, these attacks happen.
So let me ask you this, mister. Okay. You've thought you said what cyber criminals would be doing. So let me ask you this. If you were an SRT member, where would you be looking for vulnerabilities right now? Yeah.
Well,
we went there.
Okay. Well, I would say there's a couple of ways to look at it. I mean, I'm going to go from the pure ethical hacker perspective.
Please.
At the end of the day, I like to believe I've always felt like, when I was a kid growing up, I always felt like I wanted to use my skills for good. Like I had this naive thought that when I went to college, I was going to come up with the next algorithm that sped something up and made everything faster, and that was going to be my contribution to the world. And one of the things that I realized really quick was that while I love technology and I love all the digital bits and bytes that go back and forth, it's really about making people aware about what's going on and exposing the knowledge and the power that's available to people. Um, and so, in essence, I feel like, most researchers are, or even hackers are altruistic, wanting to do good. They want to be able to take this skill that's often misunderstood, often overrepresented in a possibly a negative light, and show how it can be done for good. And so if an ethical hacker is put in this position, a couple of things that I would look at for myself. One would be, I would look at I would start local and go global, in terms of what are the things that are helping me, my family stay safe? What are the things that are helping my city, my state? And so services that I depend on, and making sure that those services, if they have, security programs in place, working with them to make sure that, those systems are secure. And that by that means, it's not about taking every single system and going down the full checklist, but using things like Metasploit, Open CVEs, latest releases of exploits that have been released, going through those lists and chaining those together, and just making sure that the easy things are taken off the table. At the end of the day, it's all about it's a composition of time. For the malicious attackers, like, they love it when it takes 2 seconds to find a vulnerability, and they have tools and scripting that help it work. The role of the ethical hacker, in my opinion, is to slice through all of that quick stuff so that it kind of reduces the signal for the malicious intent to double click and to triple click. And so from my perspective is I would go for all of those services that actually, I rely on, that my family, my community rely on. And I would do, if there's an opportunity for me to use my skills, I would do it in that capacity. Go as far across, as wide as I can, maybe not as deep as I can, but using methods to make sure that those services, are not exploitable, or don't have any open elements that, could be used against other people. And then again, making them aware as soon as possible through the right channels to make that happen. That's probably the first way I would approach it. So,
would you have other ways you would approach it?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, so if I were to do just focus on just the researcher side of things, in terms of actual things I can do with my keyboard and mouse, to do, actually say mouse, just keyboard, no one needs the mouse. But at the end of the day, when I want to do it, I think the biggest thing I would focus on is just making sure people do the basics. Like I said, it's not a Herculean effort for people, to do something as simple as making sure that, the websites that you go to have HTTPS, don't do any non-HTTP or non-HTTPS sites too. If you're supposed to be using a VPN, use a VPN. If you've got 2FA on an account that's part of your enterprise or your personal stuff, put two-factor on it just to make sure that it's running. Securing physical access, it's the easiest thing, right? This wave of chaos, social engineering is on the rise. Making sure that someone can't, socially engineer their way into your workplace and potentially, take your laptop. And have physical access,
or get access to your data center or your server room, or
exactly.
A lot of companies are still on-prem, man. So many companies are still on-prem.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because, and if you take all those little simple things and you compile them together as an ethical hacker, you have that local going global mechanism. Start local, start with your family, start with your kids, your spouse, your extended family, your community, and making sure that anyone that you care about or think would like to share this, make sure they understand these basics. Make sure that the games that they download aren't always the games that they think they are. And basically just doing that checkpoint. Again, it's about getting broad coverage. If everyone in the world set up the kind of like the top 5 checklists of what they need to do for their personal identity and their personal, services that they use, the attack surfaces would be drastically reduced. Some of these hacks, they don't have to be super intricate. Some of them are just literally, wow, you just didn't put a password, or you used a default password or whatever. But actively taking that message and training people and extending your channel and extending that into the channels of influence that you have, especially from an ethical hacker, I would say that building a personal brand is important. Looking for the opportunity to be recognized or affiliated with good use of your skills. Like I said, it's to counteract that I wouldn't say it's a stigma anymore, but to counteract, the concept is, oh, you're a hacker. That's a bad thing or a good thing. But saying, look, yes, I am a hacker, and I'm telling you how to not be hacked. And I think that is anytime that an ethical researcher can come around and be associated with that in terms of being a champion to educate kids or the elderly or whatever in their communities, and having that recognition as that person who is known for doing good, that's kind of that's what they're looking for, in my opinion. They want that recognition because that is what builds trust in their brand, and that in essence is what Synack looks for. We want researchers that we can trust, that have customers and the humanity's best interest at heart.
And you run the community, so you represent that community of SRTs at Synack, and so you tend to have the voice, and your pulse is on that community. If I'm not mistaken, what you're saying now isn't Ryan; it's everyone in the community of Synack.
Yeah, if you go and talk to any of the researchers that I talk to on a daily basis, I actually enjoy. I think you said it at one point we were talking about having an amazing job, and I actually do feel I have like one of the most amazing jobs. I love speaking. I love talking about technology, but more so I love tinkering with technology. And when I have a system, when I have an opportunity to be a mouthpiece to talk about something as amazing as security research, something that spans, it's really interesting because like if you look 10 years ago, for example, the disciplines that people learned, like people were focused about, oh, I'm going to learn Microsoft, I'm going to learn Cisco, I'm going to learn Java. The skill sets were very, very specific, and people were like, I am an application developer, I am a network engineer. When you look at someone that is skilled in, security and pen testing, they span all of it. They can't just be one. They don't have to be experts, but they have to know how everything connects. And I think that that's an interesting point where they are proud of that knowledge and the fact that there are not that many people. I mean, again, there are a lot of them, but there's not people that can claim that they understand everything from soup to nuts, from beginning to end. And when you can give a person a platform like that, they shine. I mean, they want their name to be known as synonymous, with good and positivity, because that just makes it easier for them when they go and they want to, if they want to, for example, start their own pen testing firm, or they want to go out on their own, or leave their day-to-day job. I think that brand is what they are building, and that's exactly what all these researchers want. In essence, that, and also fun. They just want to have fun. Most of the guys and girls, in fact, will basically go and just do the work and enjoy the technical aspect of doing it, and then from there move on to the next thing. Like they just are completely just ingratiated in the fact that there is this opportunity with a specific configuration of hardware and software that I didn't know, and now I know it intimately and intricately, and I was able to solve that puzzle. And that a lot of the times is another element that they look for. So.
I love that. And so kind of in closing our session, I wanted to ask you this. A lot of people are worried about their jobs. A lot of people are out there and they're wondering how they're going to earn bread and bring food and pay the necessities for themselves and their families. How can other SRT members, join the Synack team? And what can you tell us about the opportunities you guys have right now and how you can help them get on board? Because you guys have a very thorough, due diligent, extensive process of bringing SRTs on.
Yes, we do. And that's one of the things I think that brought me to this community when I joined Synack, was the fact that this process is not like, it's not just every person can come in. We do have a very, a very deep vetted process in which people come in. But at the end of the day, what we're looking for is talent and trust. We need to have researchers that we can trust. And our process is meant to extract that trust and represent that, and also to manifest that they have talent. And from there, everything else just kind of takes care of itself. And so from our perspective, we do have this long process, but one of the interesting things I can say is we have the second version of our CTF Invitational. So we have a Team America Invitational that's online. It'll be from April 3rd to April 10th. There's going to be LinkedIn traffic and Twitter traffic about this. But if you're interested to join SRT, like I said, you can participate in this CTF. Even if you're not a U.S. citizen, you can participate. If you complete all of the challenges in the CTF in a manner that is above board of what we consider the top echelon of researchers, then we will give you a technical assessment fast pass to join SRT, which means that all you really have to do is do a little bit of onboarding, pass a background check, and then from there you have a shot to be on SRT. And it's a really quick way to kind of cut through everything. In terms of would you want to try SRT? A lot of people ask, like, well, you know, they're concerned about the reputation or the exclusivity of it. I would say that if you have this skill, it's definitely worthwhile. What's interesting to note about the Synack Red Team, and the thing I love about the platform, is that we have a whole different set of personas around who are successful with us. You know, you have the full-time researchers, which everyone knows, the names are in the news. You know, they're kind of like industry celebrities, if you will, of people who are full-time security researchers. You know, we have people of that echelon that literally make their living just working with Synack, and that's literally all they do. We have people that are part-time, so people who have part-time work somewhere else, and they do like a 20-20 split, or they're just using this as a means. Usually it's a transition step as they're trying to work their way to full-time research. And so, you know, we have offerings that work for them. And again, we're having a lot of success in that band. But where a lot of the times, especially for like the scenario that we have right now, where, you know, we have two other categories of people that I feel that are showing a lot of success, which we call them the weekend warriors. Obviously, they're people who have full-time jobs, and they come in at the end of the day, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they work at nights. And they too are finding ways in which they can carve out success and actually generate money for them, and even as much as people having a couple of hours a day. So, you know, if you're in a position where you've lost your job, or you're furloughed, or you don't have, you know, you're trying to find a way to use your skills and make money. If you fit into one of those categories, you know, we definitely recommend that you apply.
Ryan, I want to say thank you. Then we partnered for RSA. And I will say, spending 2 days with your executives and with your community team members and with all the different people has helped me understand why kind of looking at the traditional method of doing security testing and is needs to really change, because at the end of the day, we're in a global workplace. We live in a global world, and you want to be able to interact with all kinds of different people and not just one kind of thought process. You want to have multiple kinds, and you guys definitely do that. I can tell you that. I've been so impressed with what you guys have put together, and I love Jay and Mark. I mean, you guys have great leadership, and leadership is everything. It's how companies succeed and how companies fail, and you guys have amazing leadership as well. And that's for people who are looking to be part of an SRT, this is definitely the route to go. Joining you guys as a program really does bring out really good talent, and all of your clients that use you guys have all been just phenomenal fans of it. So that always speaks volumes.
Yeah, no, I can't agree more with your comments around like just having a global mindset. Like I said, you don't get to pick and choose who's the malicious intent. It comes from everywhere. And if you double down in one area, guess what? It's going to come from another area. So I do enjoy actually, for myself in general, working with researchers from around the world, you know, Turkey, Canada, US, Egypt, you name it. It's fun to meet them in person. It's fun to, like, you know, pick apart their personalities, but it's more impressive just to see how, like, you know, regardless of where they're coming from, they can all come together around the bits and the bytes that they're all sending across the network, right? They're all like, oh yeah, this is, you know, it's this common language. It's almost like it's almost similar to math being the universal language. And it's, you know, the artist in me says it's a beautiful thing when you see people like that have no bearing whatsoever, never really met each other in person, but when they meet, like, instantly having something to talk about. And then what leaves the room is definitely like a network effect of, you know, 1 + 1 is 6, because you know, knowledge, information has changed hands, everyone's growing. And that what the outcome of that is, you know, the customers that we have that love us get to benefit from that, because now all that output that came from them coming together is now being deployed in their test and making sure that they're getting more coverage. You know, so again, the universal, the worldwide deploy of the SRT is the biggest advantage I think we have. But more importantly, it's just the community that I know that was here when I joined, and the one that I'm looking to continue to build and grow is definitely going to just make that even better. So.
Absolutely. Ryan, thank you so much. Folks, a great session here with Ryan Rutan. We're going to take a short break, come back with another session here in just a few minutes. So, as you're streaming this today, as you're listening, very important to understand this. Ryan, thank you so much, buddy. I really do appreciate your time. Enjoy Austin, Texas. I wish I could be there right now and get a taco, but I can't.
Yeah, next time you're here, we'll get some.
Absolutely. Folks, that's it for now. We'll be back with so much more after this break. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. More stuff coming your way. So just, you can go use the restroom. There's a break. Don't worry. We'll be back. All right, guys. Until then.